Hey guys, Lantern here, and I'm bringing a new fun deck. I'm always on the lookout for a trolling deck to play online when I'm bored of Zoo. And this was one of them. I played this for a while, back when it was in the Lantern IQs. One of our friends put it together and did some success with it. And this is the sort of more online version. This one actually that I'm showing you right now won a daily event. And I want to talk about this one before I talk about the one that I'm actually going to talk about. This is known as Reanimator in Modern, or it's known as Goro's Vengeance, or as Glass Cannon Grizzle Banned, or is known as Grizzle Banned. I like Grizzle Banned a lot, except Wizards of the Coast obviously don't, because it's got a bad connotation to it. But you gotta understand what this deck does before I can talk about the next one. So what it really aims to do, at best, is do a turn 1 Faithless Looting. So you draw 2, and then you discard 2 cards, and the cards you're going to discard are either going to be like a Grizzle Brand, right? And then you do a turn 2 Goro's Vengeance. You bring Grizzle Brand back to life for 1 turn. You give it haste. You swing with it. You gain 7 life. You pay 7 life with its ability. You draw 7 cards, and then you keep doing that, hopefully hitting things like Soul Spike was a good one that people used, but this all-in version uses Fury the Horde. So you get Fury the Horde out, you get yourself another combat phase, you swing with the Grizzle Brand again, you deal 7 damage, gain 7 life, draw 7 more cards, get another Fury of the Horde, and continue that loop until the person is dead. Now, there's some cool things you can do with it. You can throw a Pact of Negotiation in there if you end up getting, like, having it get pathed, whatever. But this is a very all-in combo, and it's actually the reason why I don't like it. You have an Emrakul in here, by the way, too, so that way you can do a turn 3 Goro's Vengeance in response to the Emrakul getting discarded from a Faithless Looting or something. And this is the one that you see a lot more of. You use Pentam Prison for the ramp. Is it Charm as more redundant Faithless Lootings? Through the Breach is sort of another version of Faithless Looting, another version of Goro's Vengeance that'll get out an Emrakul or a Grizzle Brand. But I never liked it, because it always felt like, oh, well, you use some graveyard hate and they die. Or, oh, I survived the first time they Faithless Lootinged into a Grizzle Brand, which means I've got another 7 or 8 turns before they're actually able to do anything again, because they need to draw their cards in their hands and have the correct combo pieces. And that's one of the reasons why I never liked playing this deck, is it always felt like sometimes I either win awesomely or sometimes I win not awesomely. I don't win at all. And I loved playing against this even as a Zoo deck, which is ironic because Zoo decks are historically bad against things like combo decks. But I just knew I needed to put in some Scavenging Oozes and this deck would lose. Unless I would end up getting through the Breach, which at turn 5 you're probably dead already. But this new one came online. I'm not going to take credit for it. It was, I found it 4-0'd 2 days ago online. And it actually has like a lot of redundant backup plans, which is really cool. It's not just a all-in combo deck, but it feels like 3 or 4 combos. It feels like sort of like Assault Loom, Reanimator, Goro's Vengeance, and Necrotic Ooze combo put together in one. So I think it's almost like the sum of their parts deal. Like, each of their parts may not be a tier 1 deck, but all together they might actually have something, and it's kind of hilariously synergistic. I didn't realize that, but it really, really is. And let me go through this deck real quick. You still have the same combo where you've got Grizzle Brand and Goro's Vengeance, and things like Faithless Looting to get it in there. But you're also adding some more new elements into it, like Bardos Enraged, which is a strong enough beater on his own. I mean, like I wouldn't feel bad throwing this guy out off of Goro's Vengeance, because you're still hitting for like 7, and then you probably are just going to toss the rest of the lands that are in your hand. So you may hit them for 7 and then hit them for an extra like 5, and if you have any sort of soul spikes left over, you can finish off the game. So that's one combo with it. The other one is that you can just zombie infestation if you really need to get blockers, and it acts as a way to discard cards for Necrotic Ooze or get the Grizzle Banned deal you started. Deathrite Shaman's using all the food that you're throwing in there anyways to deal some extra damage and to sort of do some long reach. So again, you could do a Barbios Unrage and then Deathrite Shaman him to death eventually with what was in your graveyard. He also acts as like a late game sort of deal. Necrotic Ooze is a backup plan if you end up doing Grizzle Banned and you end up doing Barbios and then you end up getting like your vengeance gone or stolen from you from a Thoughtseize or something. Necrotic Ooze acts as a backup, and you will actually see this in a couple games that I played. And you're not going to be doing the all-in thing with Grizzle Banned, saying that you're going to get more combat phases. What you're going to end up doing is probably soul spiking them to death. That's a legit reason, or just getting more stuff into your graveyard and the next turn killing them with things like Zombie Infestation. Zombie Infestation is great here because if you end up hitting with Grizzle Banned, you do 7 damage, you end up being able to soul spike once, and you've got a Zombie Infestation on the field. Then you can end up dumping all those cards with tokens and say, either you wipe the board next turn, or I kill you. So it's a nice redundant backup plan. The deck's got like some actual legit reasons, and it runs better things that just don't dump things into the graveyard. It like runs Grizzly Salvage, which is a great way to get yourself like a land that you need, or mana fixing that you need, maybe a Deathrite Shaman or Necrotic Ooze as the backup plan goes, while still dumping things into the graveyard. Lightning Axe is an easy 1-mana discard spell that also can take care of things that are like in the way of like Necrotic Ooze, like Goyfs. And its sideboard is actually pretty cool too. The one Pestilence Demon ends up being like a great reanimator target with Unburial Rites to be like, well, Pestilation Demon's gonna eventually kill you, or like you go ahead and it's like I've had a game where it's like turn 7 and I have the guy down to near death, and if I were to I can't Goros Vengeance a Pestilence Demon, but I can reanimate a Pestilence Demon really easily, and then just ping him to death. So it's great. These are great backup plans. It also allows you to do things like it's got a main decked Cavern of Souls, which will let you get through. It'll let you get through. What do you call it? It'll let you get through counterspells. And you've got your sideboard option of choice here is Thoughtseize to get rid of whatever is the bad sort of deal you got to get rid of. So let's look at some games here. I actually played quite a few games with this deck because it looks surprisingly solid for being a pretty all-in combo deck. So let's watch the first game. It was a pretty easy win on my part, and I believe the guy rage quits. I wish I still had the log, but I was at work when I did it, so I couldn't show it because I was actually selling things. So this one was pretty funny. It was really quick. I got called a mega noob. I've never been called a mega noob before. I was doing the Control W in order to actually draw things easier. And I don't actually like using Control L to do my life total, just because it's more clicks and I can just literally just go 1, 2, 3, click to actually do my life total, and that's easier for me. Maybe harder for them to read. But, I mean, he ends up doing it too, so I don't know why he called me a mega noob. Considering, I don't know, that he's playing some kind of, like, balance deck here, I don't know why I'm the mega noob. But yeah, so your primary plan is to put out a Goros Vengeance with a Grizzle Banned. So I end up saying, alright, I'm going to keep this hand. I've got a way to discard the Grizzle Banned. I end up drawing the Goros Vengeance with the Faithless Looting. So I'm looking at myself here. This guy taps out, I'm doing turn 2 victory. Which, I mean, like, this deck has the same rates of oops, I win as the original version of the Goros Vengeance deck. But it also has redundancy backup plans, which makes it way better, in my opinion. Like, if you got a lucky day, maybe the Goros Vengeance deck, just because it has a little bit more oops, I wins, will win the deck. But this will probably be better in a longer tournament because it's got redundant backup plans against other decks that might just pack some graveyard hate. And so here we go. We're going to do the Oops I Win. We could do the Zombie Infestation, not needed anymore because we've got the Oops I Win combo going on. There's the Goros Vengeance. So we swing with the Grizzle Banned. Deal this guy 7 life, bringing him down to 11. Draw. We're gaining ourselves 7 life. Here I'm going to be a mega noob and go ahead and actually just do it this way because it's easier and faster. We're going to go ahead and we're just going to gain our. We're going to take away the 7 life that we just gained. Draw ourselves 7 cards. We do it through looking at the top of our library because that's easier than just clicking 7 times. I don't know any easier way to do it, so that just seems like the easiest way to do it. We end up getting a Soul Spike here, which is awesome, plus another Goros Vengeance, and we can discard something else if we need to. So we're going to go ahead and say Soul Spike you. Get rid of probably Ooze and Vengeance, although we could keep the Ooze as just backup plans if we really wanted to. And it's relevant that we gain life off of this, because if we do 2 of these, it gives us another activation of Grizzle Banned. We're going to draw ourselves some more cards. Control L for life totals, guys. Control L for life totals. And they're drawn now. Look. Freaking Megaloid? I don't know. Anyways, I laugh at that, and then he leaves the game. I'm pretty sure I had the win if I remember correctly. I had another Soul Spike in there, and that was game. So that was really, really quickly. That just like, you win. And I messaged the guy afterwards and was like, hey, maybe you should be less aggressive, man. I was just doing something that a deck was telling me to do. Right, so we're going to end up playing against this guy named Soul Raven. I don't know what he has. This is the first time I'm looking at it. It looked like a bad standard deck, to be honest with you. I guess it was like Death and Taxes almost. Or it was like a Pure Steel Paladin deck, I guess, which is weird, because Pure Steel Paladin decks are no good, unless we're talking about the Storm version, the Pure Steel Paladin Serial deck, in which case, that deck is awesome. But we're going to keep ourselves a Goros Vengeance and a Grizzle Banned. I've got two of the 3 combo pieces. I may draw something that lets me discard. Who knows? The hope is, I mean, again, there's enough oops I win in this deck that it's very possible that might happen. And these ones are basically, these two games are very oops I winny. But the next 3 games that I'm going to show you are not, and I actually fought for the victories. Just to show you what these redundant backup plans really can do. So we draw ourselves a Grizzly Salvage. That means that, yeah, turn 2 we're going to be able to discard a Grizzle Banned, hopefully, with it. So again, like, not the best discard spell we could have drawn. Like a Faithless Looting would have been the better version here. Or basically anything else would have been fine too. If we ended up getting the Barbios deal, we would have still drawn probably at least 1 land, hit him for 7, which would have brought him down to what? 7. Take away this. That's 12. Yeah, 12. Then we would have been able to do 1, 2, 3 probably. 3 times 3 is 9. That brings him down to 3. Which would have made it easy for us to just hang on and maybe get a Soul Spike and then win the game. Who knows? But we're going to go ahead and Grizzly Salvage here. Again, this is at least going to net us a land, which even if it nets us a land and puts Barbaros, which is quote-unquote the worst thing that we can put in the graveyard. I get Ooze is the worst thing we could put in the graveyard, or a Deathrite Shaman. But we would have gotten, if there was Barbios, we could have gotten a land and then just reanimated that with the Goros Vengeance and probably done some extra damage, probably to finish him off. Like I said, man, there's a ton of redundancy in this deck, and you don't need to wait around nearly as much as you do with the other version of the deck where you have to discard like things like Emrakul. So Grizzle Banned here went into our thing. Plus we got the we did in fact get a Barbaros, but the Grizzle Banned is a better choice. So he's gonna he knows he's gonna die. He untaps. puts out a silver blade paladin, gets himself probably a sword with his extra mana, and that's gonna be quickly the end of the game. We're not gonna fast forward it, so that way you can see what happens here. Again, our default is Grizzle Banned into Soul Spike, or then another Goros Vengeance for next turn. But Soul Spike is what we're hoping to get here.
Stop.
Oh yeah, I had a little game connection here. Which shook me a little bit to redo.
Hey, you get her, please. Dude, stop. Shh.
My dog is going nuts in the background. I'm sorry about that. She just likes to bark. There's dogs that she needs to defend against. So, anyways, we end up drawing naturally a Soul Spike on this turn, which is great. And then that means we already have a Soul Spike. We just need to grab ourselves more black cards, but we already have at least 2 black cards that we can exile for this deal. So I'm going to put out a Verdant Catacomb. The reason why is because I'd rather crack this, thin my deck out a teeny bit before deciding to put out a Grizzle Brand, and then drawing a bunch of cards, because I'd rather draw action cards than land cards at this point with this guy specifically. So anyways, he sees that, and the game's over. Let's see here. Moving into the next replay. Let's see here. Yeah, we play with a different guy because he leaves a lot. You'll find a lot of this deck, they won't keep playing you. So I probably should have kept this hand, as it had Faithless Looting, and I might have gotten something to go with Necrotic Ooze. But I decided to see if I can go for the Oops I Win combo and immediately find one land hand. I'm just going to fast forward through this game because it does not happen. I end up putting out a Deathrite Shaman. And nothing really happens for a long time. I get myself a Goros Vengeance and a Grizzle Brand, but no way to reanimate it, so I will lose this game. I make the choice here when I get to 7 cards in hand not to discard the Grizzle Brand, because I don't want him to know that that's what I've got, and it just wasn't going to work out for me. So he doesn't know what I've got. He knows I have a Deathrite Shaman and an Overgrown Tomb, so he probably thinks I'm on Jund. And I let him think that because I knew there was probably no good chance for me to win that game. But here we're going to now get into the long game, which is why I like this deck a lot better. Its redundancy is much, much cleaner than the other one. The other one would probably just lose. But this at least has a little bit of a game against a deck that is packing counterspells or some sort of interaction. I'm hoping with the Faithless Looting that I might be able to draw out of this. I do not. I end up just getting more lands. So I tossed an Unburial Rites in there. I could have probably tossed more lands in there, but I've decided that I need my 4 lands at least. 4 Necrotic Ooze to get cast. And the jig is going to be up in a little bit anyways. I don't know that he's packing main deck Surgical Extractions. I didn't know that. Maybe he did know what we were, but I figured, if he goes for the Surgical Extraction on the Unburial Rites, really it doesn't matter to me too much, because that means I have to deal with 1 less Surgical Extraction, and I only have 1 Unburial Rites in the deck anyways. So I'm going to try to cast a Zombie Infestation here. It hits a Spell Snare, and I'd rather something hit a counterspell than nothing hit a counterspell. It'll be better for later, I think. And he decides that's what he's going to be for the end of turn. I untap, draw myself a Grizzle Brand, which means something eventually down the line. But right now, Grizzle Brand is safer in my hand. So I put the land out there that's going to be untapped. and pass the turn. He ends up surgically extracting my Unburial Rights. Big whoop! It would have been helpful for later on when about around here in the game. He ends up putting his Shackles out, though, because I guess he's got nothing else to do with the mana. The bad thing with Tezzeret is that when it's doing something that's being interactive, it's very on top of things. When it has a Tezzeret, it usually wins the game. When it does not have a Tezzeret, or I'm not really playing very much interaction, I'm just letting him stew in his own not doing anything stuffs, he's got nothing to do. So he's going to end up casting his Shackles. He's going to end up casting his Shackles next turn, which is going to keep me from putting the Ooze out. There's no reason for me to cast an Ooze and let him have it, and then start beating me down with it, when I can just keep it in my hand. And at worst, I can cast the Necrotic Ooze later on in the game, have him say, I will steal your Necrotic Ooze, and then me say, I'm going to do Grizzle Banned's ability because it's in the graveyard, or something's ability in the graveyard, and kill you with it. That's the better choice. Right now, he's got nothing that's threatening me. So there's no reason for me to do it. So it goes into Shackles mode. So that means I'm not going to cast any Deathrite Shamans, or I'm not going to cast any Necrotic Oozes, unless I'm immediately going to win by casting them. Deathrite Shaman, I won't immediately win by casting. And I'd rather not cast it so that he gets a hold of it and starts exiling graveyard shenanigans out of my own graveyard. And Necrotic Ooze, I'd rather leave it up until I have, like, a Barbos in the graveyard, and then a ton and a half of lands in my hand or something that I can just go off with, or Grizzle Banned in my graveyard, just draw my entire deck while then giving him my Necrotic Ooze. Which point maybe have another Necrotic Ooze, or have two Necrotic Oozes, and then I've got better stuff in my graveyard that Necrotic Ooze finds, so it's not like a big deal. And at this point I'm like, well, maybe I'll just cast Grizzle Banned. He might have counterspells, he might not. If he ends up having counterspell, well then I've got a Grizzle Banned in my graveyard, Necrotic Ooze that I can cast and then start doing Grizzle Brandy stuff with. So again, like that's the backup plan, is that Grizzle Banned helps being in our graveyard at that point, but Necrotic Ooze, I mean, it's still beat her sometimes too. So we're gonna wait. We're just basically doing land drops here. The deck does run a higher amount of land drops. It's got 22 rather than, like, I don't know, does this guy have 16? He's got 20 because he's running a Through the Breach build, but sometimes they even have 16. And he's got nothing. He's drawing a great deals of blanks. His Shackles, which are great against, like, any creature deck, is awful in this matchup. So he must have thought I was Jund. I assume he thought I was Jund. We end up getting another thing. There's a Stomping Ground. And I forget that Grizzle Banned, because I never cast Grizzle Banned normally, costs 8. It's weird because you think that he would cost 7, since he's a 7/7, that you could pay 7 life and then get 7, but he's not. So I accept my mistake and keep my life down. We draw ourselves Faithless Looting. Sure. So we're going to Faithless Looting here. And we draw ourselves a land plus a Grizzle Banned. So we can dump the Grizzle Banned into the graveyard and have something for Necrotic Ooze. Or we can keep the Grizzle Banned and have it as sort of a backup plan of, like, oh, if you counter this Grizzle Banned, I've got another one. And that's what I end up doing, because I feel like he probably has a counterspell at this point. He's got 3 cards in hand. Might as well just keep a Grizzle Banned in hand and not try to do a Necrotic Ooze with it, especially if the Necrotic Ooze can still get stolen by the Vulcan Shackles. So I'm going to flash back Faithless Looting here, because why not? I've got the mana. And I end up having Goros Vengeance and a Lightning Axe. But I could discard my Grizzle Banned and the Lightning Axe here, and then go for the Goros Vengeance. But the problem is, if I do that and he has a mana leak in hand, or if he had a Spell Snare, it wouldn't matter. But if he had a mana leak in hand, or any kind of like Spell Pierce, then I want to be able to pay for that. So I'm willing to wait the turn. This is going to go for a long game. I know it's going to go for a long game. He ends up drawing a Pithing Needle and names Grizzle Banned. So I figure that's fine. That's totally fine. We end up drawing another Goros Vengeance, which is fine. So we're going to do the Goros Vengeance. He can mana leak it, and it does not make a difference to me at this point. Because if he mana leaks it, I've got 3 mana to pay for it. Hell, if he mana leaks it twice, I've got 6 mana to pay for both of them. So we're going to go Goros Vengeance, the Grizzle Banned. It's not going to hit a counterspell, because he knows that we can pay for it, and that's just a waste of the counterspell on his part. We're going to swing, because why not? You know, just it's going to gain us 7 life and start putting us out of his, like, Treasure Mage or Trinket Mage pings that he can do to us. And that's important. Not only that, but if we end up ever Necrotic Oozing, if we draw another Necrotic Ooze, we can actually Necrotic Ooze Grizzle Banned's ability, even though it's been targeted by Pithing Needle, and Pithing Needle, because Pithing Needle's not letting Grizzle Banned do its ability, but it says nothing about Necrotic Ooze pretending it's a Grizzle Banned. Again, one of those many backup things that's actually kind of cool. So he's going to find an Elixir of Immortality. Him finding an Elixir of Immortality is telling me that he doesn't have any main deck artifacts or graveyard hate aside from Surgicals, which is fantastic. He doesn't have any artifact forms of it, so we don't even have to worry about our graveyard being nuked at this point. He must have thought we were a different deck. So we're gonna hard cast Grizzle Banned. That's fine. I'm okay with Grizzle Banned being in the graveyard because again, I've got a Goros Vengeance to reanimate it if I want to. And again, we could care less. So I basically got 2 more Grizzle Brands in my hands. And let's see, he ends up doing, I think he's got Thirst for Knowledge, which is cool. We decided to go for the Goros Vengeance route because again, if he has Mana Leak, I can deal with it. And hitting him for 7 still brings him down to 2, which is fine and dandy. I can even do something else to end up killing him. And I don't really worry about the Trinket Mage or anything because I can, again, Lightning Axe him to death. One of the things I'm looking for here is that maybe I'll get myself a what do you call it? I end up drawing nothing really well, but I do draw the Cavernous Souls, which will mean that Grizzle Banned next turn cannot be countered. So that was a good move on my part. I don't even need to worry about having to get anything else in the graveyard at this point. Grizzle Banned just being casted on his own will finish the game up. Does not matter that he's going to be Elixir of Immortality ing constantly, because even if I deal 2 damage to him, because this guy crosses out 5 damage, I still will win the game because he won't be able to kill me. Point blank. Engineered Explosives, not going to do much against this deck. He ends up showing that he's able to engineer explosives for 4, which will be enough to kill the Necrotic Ooze, but cannot kill a Grizzle Banned. Cannot kill a Boreos either. He attacks with his Trinket Mage for a whole 2 damage. And he's got a Surgical Extraction that he can hit. He cannot hit the Grizzle Banned with it because there is no Grizzle Banned in the graveyard. It's all been exiled. Something actually kind of alright that Goros Vengeance does. So, I mean, his best targets to hit right now are things like Soul Spike, Goros Vengeance to hope that I don't like pull it out of nowhere on him again. Also wants to maybe hit. As Lightning Axe doesn't do anything. Grizzly Salvage. I mean, it's all right, but all of this stuff cannot be hit with Surgical. We're going to cast the Grizzle Banned. I'm going to say I don't care if you had any form of counterspell. You better have some kind of form of removal. Which, I mean, Dispeller Capsule doesn't even hit that, right? Because it's a black card. Go for the Throat would be the thing to hit, but it's not like something he can draw. He's going to Elixir of Immortality, try to pull himself out of death range from, you know, like, one turn of death. Maybe get himself another Elixir of Immortality to try to pull him out of it. But there's really nothing he can do here, and I think he knows that. He's really only got one draw phase to do anything. He doesn't want to attack because then I kill one of his creatures and I just gain life off of it. I'm gonna hold this just in case I get ourselves a Gruul guild leader. Because hey, that might actually be helpful. I think we're just going to fast forward at this point because it's pretty much just the end of this. He's going to surgically extract the Goros Vengeance. Isn't really going to do much because we're not going to Goros Vengeance anyways. We're just going to win. Draws a card and it's nothing. It's worth nothing. Alright, so this is the last one. Again, the game goes long. I knew it was going to go long, so here's what I ended up doing. I ended up sideboarding a little weirdly. I sideboarded in the Pestilence Demon, because if that's in the graveyard and I've got a Necrotic Ooze out, then the long game I will win. I could have probably put Through the Breach in there, but I'd be honest with you, I'm not so skilled with this deck. It's one of the first times I ended up picking up the deck, so I didn't really know. I did put a Cavern of Souls in there, because I thought Cavern of Souls would be better if he's got counterspells like he did, and I ended up putting Thoughtseizes in there, because Thoughtseizes can still make me discard a spell if I need to get the Oops, I Win. And what I ended up taking out was, what did I end up taking? I ended up taking out the Lava Axe, because the Lava Axes were useless, pretty much. So the Thoughtseizes can still target me, and it can target my opponent if I ended up needing to make sure there's no counterspell in the way. I ended up keeping this hand. I don't know. I was just testing anyways. I knew the game was going to go long, so I had a couple draws probably. Thoughtseize can still make me discard my own Grizzle Banned to win the game if I draw one. If I don't, big whoop. I get a Deathrite Shaman. Deathrite Shaman's cool because it can make me excel. If I ended up getting a, what do you call it here? The next turn I ended up getting a, if I ended up getting a anything that could be used for me to toss Grizzle Banned in there, and he didn't have a counterspell, I could use the Deathrite Shaman to go off this turn instead. I do not, but I do swing for one. That's that Deathrite Shaman beats. And he's going to do something that's pretty arguably stupid on his part, but he thinks might win, because I did not have any basic lands. I have not shown any basic lands whatsoever. I just happen to have one in my hand. And he ends up deciding that it's time to Blood Moon me instead of getting a basic. I guess he couldn't even get a basic island anyways. And he decides that the Blood Moon would be better because most of his spells are actually, like colorless. So he can Blood Moon himself and screw himself over with no access to blue and still be able to win the game. However, I do have access to black, and I also still have access to 3 colored mana if I need to with the Deathrite Shaman. So that's fine and dandy too here. And with my black, I'm able to cast Unburial Rites naturally, getting ourselves a Barbagos or whatever we need to. So there's Elixir. If I was him, I would have Elixired like right now instead of just passing the turn here, because then he would have denied me access of 2 of his mana, and that would have been better for him in the long run. But I think he wants to be able to maybe get some more stuff in the graveyard and recycle it. So I'm going to kick off one of his lands here. And I'm going to cast myself Necrotic Ooze. Necrotic Ooze is still a 4/3 for 3 and can beat down. So I'm going to be hitting for 5 a turn with this, guys. Not to mention, if I discard anything, then Necrotic Ooze can act as a pretend version of any of the stuff I discard, whether it's Deathrite Shaman or it's a what do you call it? It's a Grizzle Banned. Pestilence Demon is another good one, even though it would only be hitting for 1 extra a turn that way. And with this, he's got a way to sort of like keep me out of the loop for a while. He could pay 1 life and make a goat, which will block the Necrotic Ooze, and he'll be losing 2 life a turn. Or he could just discard a card that he doesn't need and gain himself 4 life each time. I don't know why he didn't do that turn when he put out the trading post. He very well could have. I think he's realizing that mistake. He's got a surgical extraction to get rid of whatever he needs to. Yeah, I don't think he has any way to get rid of his Blood Moon, so there's no way that I've got to worry about this Videlkin Shackles. He can sacrifice it to draw a card. So what's going to end up happening is I'm just gonna keep drawing. I don't actually think it does end up the battlefield tapped, but for no reason's sake, we're gonna say okay. We're gonna go, that's fine. I'm pretty sure it's now a basic mountain. Well, it's not a basic; it's an unbasic mountain. But I believe since it enters the battlefield as a mountain and loses all of its text, it actually does come into play untapped. People don't really know that. They think that shock damage still shocks them. That's not true. It is a static ability, thus entering the battlefield as a mountain and does not do anything else. I guess he has a Tezzeret. He's hoping that maybe he can get out some basics. I don't know. The deck doesn't really play with that many basics. This was sort of like a kamikaze move. I guess he just didn't think he had any other interaction to get away with the Oops, I Win combo. Deathrite Shaman being a champ and just getting me out of this Blood Moon. And he hasn't activated his elixir yet, so we're going to take advantage of that and get rid of the last thing in his graveyard. Get ourselves a Grizzly Salvage, which is going to be awesome and going to lead us to this awesome victory. This guy didn't think it was awesome. He just sort of quit and was like, whatever, goodbye. But this was really cool that we ended up getting a Grizzle Brand and a Barbagos, the Enraged. And we're like, that's fine. We're going to go ahead and get this Deathrite Shaman. We're going to let the rest go into the graveyard. I mean, we probably could have grabbed the Overgrown Tomb. But I decided to go with the Deathrite Shaman because at least I can cast the Deathrite Shaman if I have to. And I'm pretty sure I have the game win anyways. So we're going to attack with this, deal 4 damage with him. He can surgically extract at any point in time, but in any point in time we can go ahead and respond to that. So he's thinking about surgically extracting something, ends up deciding, whatever, I'm going to take 4 damage. He ends up taking 5 damage. I correct him, it's only 4. But this is when the coolness starts happening. So I'm going to say, that's fine. We go into our main phase now. And guess what? Necrotic Ooze, even though it's just a 4/3 here, actually is still Barbagos. And because of that, we're gonna throw this land at you. We're gonna just toss that land at you right there. That's gonna deal 3 damage to you, and you're gonna go in response. I'm gonna get rid of that. I'm gonna surgically extract your Barbagos. And I'm gonna be like, that's fine. In response to that, we're gonna toss another land at you. That land deals 3 damage to you. And you can do, in response to that, crack your Elixir of Immortality to gain yourself some life. And I will go, that's fine and dandy. In response, this Ooze actually is a Grizzle Brand too. I'm going to lose 7 life and draw 7 cards. And I'm not even going to care if I draw any sort of like Soul Spike. I'm going to toss this land at you, and deal some more damage to you. If we need to, we could then Soul Spike you and gain some life, and then continue that sort of cycle. So it was like really, really, really fun. So this deck, again, has some like really cool backup plans here, which is why I like it. I highly suggest you guys try it out because it's a lot more stable than just the Oops I Win version of Grizzle Banned.